What's up everyone, Mark here, and welcome to the Prepared Pantry episode 17. Today we are taking on apple pie, and we are doing this for my friend Caitlin, who recently had a mishap making her own apple pie. And it's easy to have that happen, right? Apple pie is very easy to have go wrong. Apple is a very wet fruit, and two very common problems you get are an apple soup in the bottom of the pie pan, and as a consequence of that, a sogged out bottom crust. And also, a lot of times the apples don't even end up cooked all the way through. Apples give off an awful lot of water in the cooking process, and unless you find a way to control that, you're going to end up with a soggy pie. So two things we're going to do here. One, we are going to pre-cook the apples. As simple as that. We're going to cook them to draw out some of the moisture and get them to shrink up a little bit so that when we pack them into our pie crust, we end up with a nice, dense, all apple pie that you can really cut a slab of in the end. The other thing we're going to do is we are going to use my favorite all butter pie crust. It's the same pie crust that I used in the pot pie recipe. You can check that out if you haven't seen it yet. It's just a very basic pie crust. It's good for just about any application. Once you've got it kneaded together and rolled out and refrigerated into discs, it's freezable and lasts months. So that's exactly what I did. I had a couple of discs of the pie dough in the freezer, and that's what I'm going to use to make my pie today. All I really needed to get to make this pie were the apples, and every other ingredient I had on hand already, and like I said, I already made the pie crust. I highly encourage you to make your own pie crust. I have ready-made supermarket pie crusts in my freezer as an emergency, but I also have, as I said, my own pie crusts in my freezer that I tend to use more often. You know, nothing wrong with using store-bought pie crust in a pinch, but you really want to try and make your own. It's really that much better. It really makes all the difference. Before we get into the recipe, I just wanted to thank you all again so much for your continued support of the channel and for continuing to watch the videos. Please give the video a thumbs up if you like it and if you like the recipe. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Click the red button down below or the watermark over in the corner. And when you do, make sure you hit the bell icon so you get a notification every time I have a new video out. All right, let's get started. Okay, so for our ingredients, we need, as I said, a prepared batch of double crust pie dough. My all butter pie dough recipe is linked down below, and as I said, it's the one that we've used in a couple of other recipes so far on this channel. We are going to need 5 pounds of apples. I like to do a mix of sweet and tart, so I've got 2.5 pounds of Granny Smith and 2.5 pounds of Golden Delicious. We need half a cup of white sugar, a quarter of a cup of packed brown sugar. We have a half a teaspoon of lemon zest. We have a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. We have an eighth of a teaspoon of cinnamon, and we have 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. Now, I did not have fresh lemons. I just have the little, the little squeezy plastic lemons. Good enough for this. So that's what I got for my lemon juice. But the zest, what I like to do is when I do have fresh lemons, and I use them for juice, I keep the rinds in a bag in the freezer. I can use them in the future for zest. I can probably squeeze a tiny bit more juice out of some of them if I really had to. But aside from zest, they're also great to drop in the garbage disposal, frozen, run for a few seconds with some warm water. It kind of helps clean things up, and it makes it smell nice when it's otherwise smelling pretty funky. So just another little tip there. Lastly, we're going to need 1 beaten egg white, beaten with just a little bit of water. That is going to be to brush on the top crust before we put it in the oven, so we're not going to need that just yet. So the first thing we're going to need to do is peel, core, cut up, and slice our apples. Please let them be sliced. Please let them be sliced. Please let them be sliced. Son of a bitch. All right, well, peeled and cored, 2 out of 3 isn't bad. So we need to slice these into 1/4-inch slices. And I'm just going to put these in a Dutch oven as we get them sliced up. Okay. Now we are going to sprinkle the sugar over the top. And the brown sugar. The salt. The cinnamon. and the zest. And give this a little bit of a toss. Okay, we're going to get this going on medium heat. And cover it. And we're going to stir this pretty frequently, but we're going to let it cook down for about 15 to 20 minutes. It will cook down a lot. It will get very liquidy. And then we're going to take it off the heat to cool. Okay, just turn this down a bit. You can see that it is indeed bubbling away. And it is just full of liquid. This is liquid that would be in the bottom of your pie if we didn't cook these apples first. And you know, this also takes care of another problem. Is when you try to make a piled high apple pie, you end up with a big airspace between the crust and the apples because they shrink down as they cook. So in the best case scenario, even if you don't end up with a soup in the bottom of your pie, you're still going to have a big arched crust with a big bubble of air underneath. So we are going to spread out our apples and the juice. Onto a foil-lined baking pan and a rimmed baking sheet. That's kind of important to contain everything. And I actually had this pan in the refrigerator just to kind of cool it down a little bit to help kickstart the cooling process, because we want these apples to cool completely or almost completely before we start to assemble our pie. So in the meantime, I'm going to get the oven preheated to 425. That's going to take about as long as it's going to take for these to cool enough to handle them, and we will proceed with putting together our pie. Okay, so while the oven was preheating, I rolled out my pie dough. I carefully placed one into a 9-inch pie plate and pressed it into all the edges to make sure that it was really in there securely. Rolled out the other and placed that on a parchment-lined baking sheet. Just covered these both with plastic so they wouldn't dry out while we were waiting for the apples to finish cooling. Now, I put the apples back in the same bowl that I had mounded with the apples before they were cut and cooked, just to kind of illustrate how much they've cooked down. We also strained them through a colander, so this is how much liquid was left. We don't need all of it. We only need about 1/4 cup of it. We're going to take, as a matter of fact, 1/4 cup of the apple cooking liquid and mix that with our lemon juice. And we're going to put that over the apples once they're in the pie. So we're going to go ahead and put these in, and I'm just going to go ahead and get messy and do this by hand. We want to kind of make sure we fill all the nooks and crannies. We don't leave any airspace, and we want to mound them up a bit towards the middle. Okay, and our lemon juice and apple cooking liquid mixture goes right over the top. I'm just moisten my finger a little bit in the egg white and rub it on the edge here, just to kind of help make sure that this seals well. And we add the top crust. Okay, now we are going to very carefully place our top crust over and press it down. And we're going to press it down, sealing it to the edge of the crust, or the edge of the bottom crust. I'm going to trim off quite a bit of the excess, but I'm going to leave a little bit, because I find a little bit of extra is helpful to fold over and make sure that it stays crimped and closed. Okay, now we're going to tuck a little bit under. Okay. Now I'm going to do a little sort of pinch all the way around to crimp it closed. Also gives it kind of a nice decorative fluted edge. Okay, I'm gonna cut a few little slits just to let it vent. And we are going to brush it all over on the top with the egg white. Not a 100% necessary step, but it really does help with browning and getting that nice shiny golden crust. All right, now this is going to go onto a parchment lined baking sheet into a 425 degree oven for about 25-30 minutes. We want to see it start browning. We're going to bake it on the bottom rack. After that 30 minutes, we're going to turn it, rotate it in the oven, and turn the temperature down to 375. And we're going to bake it for an additional about 30 minutes until it's nice and golden on the top and you can see that the liquid is bubbling. At that point, we're going to take it out of the oven and we're going to have to let it cool for a good 2-3 hours completely before it's ready to serve. And that's important to make sure that any liquid that's in it has set, which it naturally will, kind of the way pectin in fruit sets jelly. So we should end up with a good solid sliceable pie. But this is going to go into the oven and we will come back when we're ready to take it out. All right, we are out of the oven, just out of the oven, 30 minutes and 30 minutes, 30 minutes at 425 and then 30 minutes at 375. And this is what we have, a pretty darn amazing looking apple pie. This needs a good 2-3 hours to fully cool. It's best served at room temperature or maybe a little warm, but it does need to fully cool so that it can set up, as I said, otherwise it will still be kind of liquidy inside. We want a nice non-soupy slice of pie, so we're gonna wait. Now it's the hard part, it's waiting. We'll see on the other side. Okay, it has had plenty of time to cool, so it is time to taste our pie. The first slice of pie is always a bit of a mess. Oh, didn't get the bottom crust. I guess I didn't cut all the way through. I mean, look at that. No soup, just apples. Some nice golden crust. And that bottom crust. And nice and golden underneath. An exceptionally good pie and not a lot of work. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video and enjoyed this recipe. I hope you'll give it a shot yourself. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.